Live from Studio A, somewhere inside the great state of Kansas, it's Leadership Late Night, brought to you by the Kansas Leadership Center. I'm DJAJ, rocking the beats and bringing the good looks to this show. Tonight's guest, the President and CEO of the Kansas Board of Regents, Blake Flanders. Now, a man who is a walking blooper reel, my dad, DJ Wetter.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the 10th episode of Leadership Late Night. DJAJ, can you believe it's been 10 episodes already?
What's the right answer here, Dad?
What do you mean? The right answer is however you honestly feel. I just thought it was crazy that we've done 10 of these shows together already.
Honestly, I thought we did 25 of these things. I've been stuck inside so long, time has no meaning.
Wow. Well, I'm sorry you feel that way. I know this quarantine thing has been a little rough. What can I do to help?
Promise you won't say no?
Within reason.
Well, I got cabin fever, and the only prescription is...
Whoa, easy. That's a copyrighted line. We don't have that kind of cash on this show.
Don't say what? I was gonna say the only prescription is the hilarious bloopers from our first 10 shows.
Oh, so you didn't know that line is eerily familiar to an old Saturday Night Live skit?
I have no idea what you were talking about. I find live sketch comedy shows rote and mundane.
That vocabulary app you downloaded is really paying off.
I concur. Now, can we do some bloopers?
Of course. Roll tape. I'll say, you got it.
What?
Do that again. Go, you got it.
When you say it or right now?
Yeah. No.
Right now.
Addie, hit that tune.
You got it!
Celebrities making pancakes that look like normal people.
Celebrities. Celebrities.
And this is what happens when third graders get together. They giggle. Blooper.
Beverages.
Celebrities.
Celebrities. Celebrities. I'll put that on TikTok.
When are you going to lose that tooth?
Oh, no.
Oh, man. It is so loose. I'm going to pull it out. Pull it out on live TV.
Oh. I've tried laying down the law with this team. I've tried these.
Maybe start with Parker and go the other way.
Okay.
Because if you get past that, it'll be a Christmas miracle.
What does it take for this team to start working?
Back up. Social distance. Celebrities.
Celebrities. It's I get it. It's super hard to say. Celebrities. Okay, it's Dad. Tell him I'm not here right now. She's not here right now.
You remember got to look in there. That was perfect. Remember, look at the camera.
She's not here right now.
Right. That's okay. Trip, did you say your dad's been doing nothing?
Yep. He's just been hanging around in his office on calls and eating candy.
I wouldn't say that.
That part is absolutely true.
Well, that's why we're next. I can't see the phone. I can't see it.
Use the framework. It will help. Go.
Wait, what?
Celebrities.
Celebrities.
What?
We're still recording them. Let's see if we get anything good.
Hey, jerks.
Just trying to help you, Dad. See you later. Dang it. Okay.
Hey, old man, when you get off the Zoom call, you hit end call.
Celebrities.
Nailed it.
Celebrity. Celebrities. There you go.
Celebrities.
Celebrities making pancakes that look like other people.
Wow. Imagine the bloopers we'll have after 100 episodes, DJAJ.
It's been fun, Dad. I love doing this show with you.
Thanks, sweetie. I've loved doing this show with you and the family, too.
But if we're still doing this show from quarantine 90 weeks from now, I'm going to lose it.
You and me both, kid. You and me both. DJAJ, you hit the beats, I'll hit the desk. All right, back here at the desk tonight, and so fun to see those bloopers. Just love going back through 10 episodes. Hard to believe we've been in quarantine now, week 7 here at the Wetter household. I know some of you getting back out on the mix, but we're still in a stay-at-home order here at Studio A, so we will continue that good work, staying home, working from home. Good to be with you tonight. A reminder, as always, we're going to have a great guest in just a moment, and if you'd like to have a conversation about what our guest, Blake Flanders, the CEO and president of the Board of Regents from the state of Kansas, has to say tonight, we'd love you to join us afterwards in the Zoom room for the after party. My tech backup, Julian Montez, always joining us. Big thanks to Julian as always, and he's going to post that Zoom link, and we hope you join us for a conversation about what Dr. Flanders has to say, as well as anything you see on the show. We should be able to have a great conversation. I think you're going to be fascinated with what Dr. Flanders has to say about the education system, the post-secondary education system come this fall, and what it would look like to have face-to-face classes. Really a fascinating conversation. Well, before we get to that conversation, a conversation that's always fascinating is a conversation about leadership that comes out of nowhere from my son Parker. So what I want to do right now is load up a little video we put together today off a Cinco de Mayo conversation in the Wetter household. Enjoy.
No. I don't care.
Leadership lessons,
From a 6-year-old.
still sponsored by
Nobody.
This has been Leadership Lessons,
From a 6-year-old.
still sponsored by
Nobody.
Speak from the Heart, one of those very important behaviors that I think we don't quite do often enough, thinking about how we share what's deep down and use it at the right moment. Not all the time, right? We can't speak from the heart all the time, but at those right moments so that that small can of soda turns into a big can of soda. Well, with that lesson in mind, I mean, how could we get any more tonight? But we're going to. I'm going to set you up here for our first guest of the evening. And again, it is Dr. Blake Flanders, the president and CEO of the Kansas Board of Regents. Now, that's the 9-member governing board of the state's 6 universities. That's in the state of Kansas. And it's also the statewide coordinating board for the state's 32 public higher education institutions. So you got 6 state universities, a municipal university, 19 community colleges, and 6 technical colleges. A lot of work going on there. And Dr. Flanders really lays out tonight what education looks like now and what it might look like in the fall as students return to campuses.
Dr. Flanders, welcome to Leadership Late Night. We want to thank you so much for joining us on the show. How are you?
I'm doing well, DJ, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, I kind of want to start at the beginning. What has it been like for you over the last 5 to 6 weeks as the president and CEO of the Board of Regents?
Yeah, I think, I think for everyone, first of all, whether or not you're the president and CEO of the Regents or whatever station in life you have, it's been interesting and really unprecedented. Prior to the threat really being in Kansas and before people really realized what a threat this virus was going to be to our state and to Kansans, our universities knew that their students were on spring break. And this was before any community spread of the virus. And they knew that they would be coming from really many states in the United States back to small towns such as Lawrence and Manhattan, Pittsburgh, and a little larger community in Wichita. And they knew they would be returning and perhaps bringing this virus with them in an unknown way. And Emporia State University reached out early as well to say, should we transition to online instruction so that we can really help our Kansas communities survive this and not really just collapse the health systems that are here in our communities? And so our Board of Regents met, listened to that input, and ultimately gave the authority to those presidents and chancellor to make that decision. And I think at the end of the day, we're going to look back and see that one decision really saved our health system from tremendous pressure and really in the end, and not to be too over dramatic, but in the end saved many lives in Kansas.
That's not an understatement when you consider the number of students that could have left and then returned to the state. During spring break week, about 20,000 students vacate the cities of Lawrence and Manhattan. Another 15,000 leave Wichita, and 5,000 leave Emporia, all with the potential to travel and become carriers of the virus.
It required some bold action, and it required leadership. And candidly, there was some eyebrows raised at the time. At the time, it wasn't just the popular thing to do and the easy thing to do to make that move. And our system of higher education went ahead and made that move, and I think in the end it'll be proven right that certainly could have been a pivotal time for that time period in Kansas and for the future of Kansas moving forward.
With students off-site and learning online, Dr. Flanders says state colleges and universities have worked overtime to play a pivotal role in the virus response. Western Kansas community colleges are providing dorms for meatpacking plants to respond to virus outbreaks. 3D printers across the university system are being used to make important medical supplies. Schools are donating medical equipment to hospitals, and research institutions have pivoted to work on potential virus treatments.
The help that they've given to communities has been just really a story in itself, and really one of those good Kansas stories. I think that's going to be one of the things we look back on and say, not only did our institutions protect the life and safety of their students and their faculty, but they also really became integrated parts of each community and the entire state.
Now, Dr. Flanders and his colleagues are working on plans for what the fall may look like at the post-secondary level.
We've all seen the adverse effect that this had on the state budget, and so we we anticipate some relatively choppy water moving forward. But we've tried to keep true to the fact that we want to be sure that our students are healthy, that we're safe. And now, as we prepare for face-to-face classes in the fall, we're really trying to think about and have our best practice on how do we live with this virus in our communities? How do we test more? How do we isolate? How can we quarantine those that have the virus, and then help them to recover so they can get back into the population?
And the Board of Regents is considering options that make face-to-face learning safer and more likely.
So what we know is that it will be unknown. And so with that, we're just looking at several different scenarios for each institution. And we know that during the semester, it could change. So things we're exploring, do we have classes 6 days a week? And do we shorten the time period for the semester? Do we decide on an academic calendar to not have a fall break or a spring break, because then you increase your risk? Do we look at the residence halls and say, maybe it's one room per person? Are we going to be at that stage? And so, for a leader, as you begin to plan for these, you know that what you're planning for today is probably not what you're going to encounter. The one thing that I've been really struck by recently is how long a period of time just 2 weeks can be, as we look at the context and the backdrop of this virus. And so we think we know what the situation is going to be. We're preparing for different situations. We know it could be very different by the time we get to the fall. But I would say right now, we're planning on face-to-face operations, and we're planning on how we're going to deal with this virus and work around it.
That said, Dr. Flanders knows flexibility will be key.
The last thing you want is a one-size-fits-none solution. You really are going to require a structure that comes from a central area, but it might need some local solutions. So here's one thing, just a very small thing. The Board of Regents sets the calendar and sets the schedule for each institution. So that has to be board approved. This next month, we will be bringing policy that allows myself and the board chair to make those decisions, so we can do it very quickly without a board meeting. Now, the board has to pass that policy change, and I expect them to do it, at least for this time period, because what we know is that we might need to make a decision within hours. And I don't think that's being over dramatic here, that really, as we find cases, we might have to adjust on the fly. And so we're going to be able to push those decisions down to our institutional leaders who are the closest to the problem. And I think that's really going to help us navigate our way through this situation.
The importance of always being ready to change was baked into Flanders' early life.
I was born and raised on a family farm, and you really had no idea what the climate and the weather was going to be like as you were producing crops and having livestock, and so you had to be ready to pivot and change at all times. And I think today, people you're really just making decision after decision. You have to gather the data, look at all your options, and then I think number one, you have to decide. So if it continues to be ready, aim, then that's really going to get you in trouble over time.
Sure.
And then you make a decision, you move forward, and course correct when necessary.
And with that attitude in mind, Dr. Flanders sees an opportunity for the state's post-secondary education system to be stronger on the other side of COVID-19.
Yeah, so I think anytime we've come through a crisis, and I think that if you look back at economic data, you'd find this to be true, is that generally those most disadvantaged coming through a crisis are those without the necessary post-secondary education and skills that make them highly adaptable in the workforce. And that's really been true about when we came through the tech bust after Y2K, the 9/11. Innovation has done that as well. It's a big disruptor. And so I expect the virus to be a disruptor as well. And so I think as we come through this, it's going to be so important that Kansans have the right education and training beyond high school to be able to really participate in what I think will be a different economy even than it was before the virus.
And that means adapting a system that doesn't have a history of loving change.
If we went out on the street, if we didn't have social distancing right now, and could interview everybody and say, what do you think about higher ed? How adaptable is higher ed? What's the pat answer that we would get there? And most people would say, it's pretty slow moving. It's not very adaptable. And I think that'd be fair that those perceptions are out there. Here's what I would tell you. In 1 week, we transitioned to all online instruction. So this system can move. And this system can be a builder of economies and personal economies and economies for the state. And so, I'm really excited about that. And I think the public will have a little different perspective, perhaps, of higher ed after we come through this, and just based on the leadership the institutions have shown.
Now, I wonder, is there anything else you'd share with people that they should know about either the work that's going on in the state or, with universities and colleges? What is there anything unsaid that should be said?
We recruit twice as many high school students to Kansas as leave for other colleges. So twice as many come in as leave. That's a real asset to Kansas. But what we're looking to do is saying, how can we really make that a permanent asset? And so we've had our universities start to help companies come to Kansas, expand their operations, and start emerging companies to provide our graduates the kind of jobs so they can stay right here in the state. I think it's one of the most exciting things that we're going to be doing in our new strategic plan. And I think it's something that maybe not everybody knows about the university system, about just how much prosperity a university system and colleges, community colleges and technical colleges, can bring to an entire state. And I'm anxious to share that with you.
I so appreciate the time, Dr. Flanders. Thank you for joining us on Leadership Late.
All right, take care. Thank you, DJ.
Just a fascinating conversation there with Dr. Flanders, and I couldn't help but take some notes along the way. Some of my favorite quotes: "We know we won't know come fall," right? We know we won't know, and that idea of knowing that you won't know means you can have the best laid plans. And some of you mentioned in the chat, and I hope we can get that chat going. Share what you heard from Dr. Flanders. It's really hitting you maybe in the heart or gut tonight when it comes to leadership, when it comes to higher ed. But I was fascinated with we know, we won't know. And so it's really about having a process then, right? Putting a process in place and being able to respond. Another one is, we make a decision and then we course correct when necessary. That's something that has really been a theme, I think, in our interviews. If you followed along on Leadership Late Night, this idea that what really needs to happen is we just need to intervene right now. It might not be all that skillful, and you've got to rely on old relationships. You've got to rely on hard work that you put in before COVID-19, and you've got to intervene and then course correct when necessary. But now is the time for action. I think that's interesting. How about the implications for higher ed? That if we believe we're going to have face-to-face interactions in this state, inside classrooms, inside dorm rooms, on campuses, it may mean 6 days a week in school. It may mean no fall or spring break. And these are all up in the air. These are all experiments being talked about. I'm not trying to get anybody in trouble here. One-person dorms. I didn't get to share this, but in the pre-interview, Dr. Flanders mentioned, down the road, it would be extremely beneficial. It's something that he and Randy Watson, the State Commissioner of Education, have collaborated on. It'd be extremely helpful to have a shared calendar for all of education in the state of Kansas, because it allows high school students maybe to take more college classes. It allows a lot more collaboration between institutions. And so I just think it's impressive how these two are really thinking about education throughout the state. And it's been fun to have them on the show back to back. And I do need to pass along happy birthday to Dr. Flanders. Tonight is his birthday. All day actually was his birthday. And his his Leadership Kansas class contacted me on Facebook to let me know to pass along those happy birthday wishes. They are watching tonight, and we just want to say happy birthday to Dr. Flanders, and thanks for being a part of the show. Well, I want to get to more of the chat, but as always, I want to mention what's going on in the Kansas Leadership Center Journal this week. A Family's Choice, talking about stimulus payments and what are the right moves for each family. And the writers with the Journal dive into that, along with many other stories this week, both in English and Spanish. So as always, I encourage you to check out the reporting being done by Chris Green and his team at the Journal. Also have some civic engagement tips that I want to share with you this week. We have a civic engagement advisory committee at the Kansas Leadership Center, and each of these members have been weighing in each week with some tips for how to be civically engaged when we can't really be all that engaged, right? We have to be social distancing. And so this from Paul Waggle: pandemics victimize the most vulnerable. Right now, more than ever, it is important to engage unusual voices and assure that no one is forgotten. Dr. Flanders mentioned that as well, this idea that the most vulnerable are often hit by these. And if we don't focus on that, if we don't consider that, making progress becomes really, really tough, especially for those of us with civic missions, or those of us that are civic minded, which I truly believe is every one of us. Another tip here tonight from Ali Medina: one of the more unique examples of civic engagement is how businesses and homes across Garden City are creating a bear hunt by putting stuffed bears out for community members to find on their walks. It's been happening in my neighborhood as well. Just a reminder, civic engagement doesn't have to be huge. We often think of it as voting or running for office, but there's so many little things you can do to engage at a civic level within your community, especially right now. And finally, our third tip tonight comes to us from Brandon. Physical distancing might require us to rethink what leadership activity looks like, how it operates, and who it engages. So I love it. It doesn't take it away. It just means we might have to rethink what that looks like. Well, as we begin to wrap up our show tonight, I want to get over here to the chat. I'm going to turn over this way and start to read some of our examples here tonight. Amber Nichols again weighing in from Leadership Kansas to remind me to wish Dr. Flanders happy birthday. Laura weighing in: as K-12 changes, higher ed needs to change. Then they need to work together in this change in our new world. We do need to look at what employers need. So noticing this symbiosis between K-12, the higher ed system, technical schools, all those pieces coming together for a better state, a really interesting way to think about higher education right now. From Seth Bate weighing in, he said, I ignored him last week. I'm not ignoring you again this week. Seth wouldn't do it twice in a row. Know the stories others tell about you and be willing to act in ways that defy those expectations. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, Seth, but how about that? Dr. Flanders mentioning he knows the story that's told about higher ed, and in turn wants to respond to that. And he's been there about 6 years now, wants to continue to respond to do something different. Kate, I believe, weighing in: changing systems and process in anticipation to provide agility for the reality of the environment we face today and in the coming months. Yes, absolutely. Ian Brown: sounds like having a plan for a process instead of having all the answers. I'm with you there, Ian. Definitely a leadership skill. Well, I want to thank all of you so much, as always, for joining us tonight. And the party isn't over. We're done here on Facebook, but we're going to take this thing over to Zoom. You'll notice that Julian has pointed that link. If you'd like to continue the conversation for another 15, 20, 30 minutes on Zoom, join us for as long as you can. Bring your favorite beverage, and we'll discuss our interview tonight, as well as a lot of leadership competencies and behaviors. That said, it is time to close out the show in our favorite way with your moments of hope. But first, good night, DJAJ.
Good night, Dad. I'm going to bed, but you can check out Dad's after party. Now, your moments of hope.